Welcome everybody. Welcome to this evening's Festival of Trusteeship session. In fact, the second session of the evening. This session is Young Trustees Wanted, Unlocking the Next Generation. So I'm Penny Wilson. I'm the director of the festival for Eastside People, and I'm just going to run through a bit of housekeeping with you. So you will have seen that the session is being recorded. If you're booking this session as a single session, you'll get the recording within a day or so. If you're a weekly pass holder, you'll get all of the recordings at the end of the festival in one go. You've been muted on arrival automatically. Please stay muted unless Ria comes to you for a question. Please note that if you do unmute, you will be on the recording. So please don't unmute if you don't want to be recorded. Closed captions are available. You need to enable those on your device. So you need to click the CC or closed caption button. Please absolutely feel free to use the chat to share reflections, to ask questions of the panel, to share resources, to share ideas. We'd really love to hear from you. Please feel absolutely free to completely ignore the chat. It can get very, very busy in the Festival of Trusteeship. Ria will read any questions that they are answering from the chat in full, so you don't need to be looking at it when questions are taken from the chat. And the chat is also on the recording that you'll receive, so if you want to catch up afterwards, you can do. If you don't already have a weekly pass, you can still purchase one. This session is part of our free strand for aspiring trustees, but I know we've got many people who are existing trustees here as well. You can still purchase a weekly pass. That's £30 and it gives you access to all 15 recordings and the events that are still to come this week. A big thank you to the Institute of Leadership, who are our headline sponsor this year. And it's thanks to them that we can put on free sessions like this and have amazing numbers throughout the festival this week. And a big thank you to the other organisations that you'll see on the screen there who've been an amazing support to the Festival of Trusteeship. A couple of extra bits of housekeeping. So please note that this session is in the public domain. Please don't put anything in the chat that you wouldn't want in the public domain. I don't think that we're going to be talking about legalities in detail, but just a note to remember, please, to check what your local regulations are. We might be talking about the Charity Commission for England and Wales, for instance, so check where you are in Scotland, Northern Ireland, or indeed elsewhere in the world. So thank you very much, and I'm going to pass over to Ria, who is chairing this session.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So, as explained, this session is all about young trustees, and the title is Young Trustees Wanted, Unlocking the Next Generation. I am a previous young trustee. I've been a trustee over the last 5 years. I've previously worked at Young Trustees Movement as the comms and admin assistant, and now I'm a freelancer with them. And we've got some wonderful people on the panel. So I'm going to give them a chance to briefly introduce themselves, move on to some questions, and then take some questions from you in the chat, or if you want to put your hand up as well towards the end. So Sim, I'm going to start with you if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, sure. Hello. Hi, thanks, Ria. My name is Sim. I am the oldest of the young trustees. I'm 28 years old. I am based down in Brighton. I'm an associate trustee of Friends Provident Foundation, which is a grant-making charity. The associate trustee role is kind of like a trainee trustee role, which I can get more into later on. I've got a background in housing activism. Specifically, I look at affordable housing and the financing of that in the UK. And I also work as a carer and a cleaner for disabled adults. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. We're going to get into so much more as we go on, but next I'm going to go to Abigail.
Hello everyone, I'm Abigail or Abby, whichever you prefer. I'm 20 years old and I'm a trustee for Buglife, an invertebrate conservation charity. I have been working in youth engagement since I was 15 years old, so I've seen the sector from basically its starting to its current point. So I'm really excited to meet everyone today and to have this discussion with you all.
Fantastic. Thank you. Agno.
Hi everyone, thanks Ria. My name's Agno and I'm a member of the WWF-UK Impact Committee. And I'm 20 years old and I have a sort of background in science. And I joined last October as one of the first young people to join the WWF sort of governance structure. And yeah, really happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And then Gilah.
Hi everyone, I'm Gilah, I'm 26. I am a trustee and company secretary of Power for the People, which is a charity that focuses on community-led development and sustainability in Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania. And my background's in peace building. I work for Peace Direct and in conflict resolution. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to start off with some general questions and then we're going to delve into a bit more detail. So firstly, and I'm going to come to Gilah first this time, then to Agno, then to Abigail, and then to Sim. Firstly, what motivated you to become a trustee and how did you actually start your journey into trusteeship? What kind of interested you at first?
Thanks so much, Ria. Yeah, I think from working in a charity as kind of like my day job, I got to know and kind of like be around boards and understand what their function is in the charity. And then a colleague actually mentioned the Young Trustees movement to me, which that really kind of opened up my eyes into what the role of young people could be on charity boards. Before that, I hadn't really kind of even considered it or that there was really a place for me on a board at the moment. And then through Young Trustees movement, I kind of educated myself on like the skills and experience that I might be able to bring, and also had a look at all the opportunities that they post there. And that's where I found Power for the People, which kind of really resonated with my values, the way of working. It's a very like people-centered approach that they take into like locally owned programs and really like recognizing the inherent expertise and resources in communities. So yeah, that's how I ended up at Power for the People and have been there for 2 years.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. Agno?
I'm not a fully fledged trustee yet. I'm in the impact committee of WWF-UK, and I really sort of stumbled upon it by chance, and then sort of discovered trusteeship through the Young Trustees movement, similar to Gilah, but the other way around. And sort of through being on the board and also partaking in the board boost program, I sort of learned more about trusteeship and how sort of young people can actually be involved in governance. And it's not really a space that I thought I had experience or expertise to actually be a part of. So it sort of opened my eyes to sort of value that I could provide without necessarily having 30 or 40 years of experience, and sort of the sort of importance of just having people from different backgrounds and having that diversity in boards.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. And just from your two experiences alone, there's such a kind of wealth of different ways to get into kind of trusteeship. But I'm interested to hear about Abigail next and then to Sim.
Yeah, so I got the fortunate opportunity to go to a board meeting before I became a trustee with the Wildlife Trust Youth Council. It was a really interesting experience and I got to meet a lot of people. And then just sitting on the board meeting, I was just like, oh wait, I could also do this as well, because it was really, really interesting. So I immediately started looking for trustee opportunities when I turned 18, and I settled on Buglife when I turned 19, and then I got officially accepted onto the board when I was 20. So it's been quite a straightforward journey. I think that like young people really need the opportunity to see what a board meeting is like and to have that chance to see if it's for them like I did, because I feel like that was really impactful for me.
Brilliant. That's really interesting to hear about your experience having gone to a committee meeting before, a board meeting before, and then kind of your journey into trusteeship. Sim?
Thanks. Yeah. Oh, so exciting to hear about Buglife. I like bugs a lot. I got into, so I'm an associate trustee and I got into it because I was working in housing activism stuff, and I was interested in I was trying to get like grants put together and stuff. I was like fundraising, and so I kind of looked at a bunch of grant funders. I applied to Friends Provident Foundation, or I might have, I can't remember. It didn't go very far. It wasn't a good fit, but that kind of put me on their radar. And I applied a few months later to sit on their paid advisory board to look at grants. So kind of second stage applications for the grants. I did that for a couple of years where I was kind of part of the foundation, coming to quarterly meetings. It was a paid advisory role, and I really got a feel for other kind of grassroots economic systems change stuff, which is what the foundation does, and also what I do in my volunteering time. After a couple of years, a trustee role came up, and it seemed really interesting to me, so I applied. But at the interview, I kind of said, I've been working with Friends Provident Foundation for a while, but it's been paid. This role is way more responsibility, but I'm meant to do it unpaid. Do you think you could pay me? I asked that question. And so thus kind of was born out this sort of pilot creation of this associate trustee role, which is like a trainee trusteeship. I started this 2.5 years ago. It was initially meant to be for a year, and it has been kind of contingent on applying to the Charity Commission to change our rules to be able to remunerate 2 out of 10 trustees on the board. While that application is pending, I continue to be an associate trustee. Yeah, okay.
Thanks for that. Yeah, so as I started to explain earlier, there's so many different pathways to trusteeship, and you can see that within the panel here. So you've got people who kind of came in through maybe getting involved in young trustees movements, and people who've gone to kind of sit into the charity kind of board meetings before applying and finding out different ways in which they could get further involved. We know that the average age of a trustee is 65, and 1 in 12 trustees are named John or David. And so there really is a desperate need for more diversity within both charity boards, but also the charity sector. And that's why having young people as trustees is one of the ways in which we can fix that. It's not the only way, and there needs to be a lot more work that happens on charity boards in terms of fostering belonging and thinking about how we can make those spaces more accessible and improve people's confidence, perhaps even of those people who haven't thought about trusteeship before. And Young Trustees Movement does a lot of that work. If you want to check them out, there's lots of resources online and lots of different toolkits and guides available for people who are maybe aspiring trustees or even current trustees that might need a little bit more support or confidence. But one of the many misconceptions around trusteeship is that young people feel like they're too young or that trusteeship isn't for them. What do you think, though, is kind of a big misconception about trusteeship, and how can we challenge that? I'm going to go to Agno first and then to Abigail.
Happy to take that. I think this is something I feel quite strongly about because I thought I shouldn't be a trustee, and I didn't think I could do it, or I didn't think I should belong in a board. Because I think the biggest misconception I had was that you really needed to know everything before you joined. You needed to know the answers, but I think the way I frame it now is you need to know what questions to ask, which isn't really about knowing, it's about being able to respond based on what you feel at the time. And that it's really what's helped sort of change my perspective on it. I think there needs to be a lot more sort of, like, rather than having a bulleted list of this many years of experience in this field or that field, there needs to be sort of more sort of soft skill, and like a lot more help and aid in talking about how important it is to be able to ask those thoughtful questions, bring that other perspective, and really bring that sort of problem solving into the collective and a wider group. Because I think that's sort of that willingness to challenge assumptions is what like really makes a board healthy and well run. I think we sort of need more visibility of young trustee stories as well, because I hadn't heard of any young trustees before I stumbled upon it by chance. I think that where there are young trustees, they need to be sort of shown off more, and there needs to be sort of more talk about how they've been involved and how there's not really that need for a whole set of skills before you join, and that you can really learn on the job, and that it's a process of developing whilst on the board, not just showing up fully developed as a perfect trustee. I think that's for everyone, not just young trustees. A lot of the things that I talk about for, say, young trustees, I think applies to every trustee. And I think that's what I found a lot every time I bring up a point in one of our meetings. So it's like, oh, all of the other trustees also thought the same thing. And they were like, we shouldn't just pigeonhole that to a young trustee sort of factor of misconception. It's a general trustee misconception, but it usually does also hit young trustees the most because we don't hear about it as much.
Yeah, brilliant. I think you've really hit the nail on the head there, kind of about how trusteeship is a continual kind of learning process. And as a trustee, most all trustees should be learning as they are a trustee, and that's what makes a healthy board. And adding to that, I guess, having the diversity of perspectives and different perspectives, including those of young people, and intergenerational perspectives and intersectional perspectives, is really important in terms of having a healthy board. Abigail?
Yeah, I completely second what you said there. When I was first looking to join the board, I was really concerned that I perhaps wouldn't be able to keep up with it because I don't have that financial experience that a lot of trustees have. I don't have that expertise in CRM systems. But then, and this is both to aspiring young trustees and also to boards considering putting them on their board, I realized that young trustees aren't necessarily going to be bringing the same experiences, and that's a good thing. For instance, like if you are a charity who relies on fundraising, you might notice that, for instance, you have less members who are young people, or you might notice that your fundraising methods are working mostly on old demographics. And of course, there are like natural reasons for that, like having a job, for instance, but also, like if you're a young person, you can quite easily see if a strategy isn't going to work for you. And so I do think that a lot of young trustees here are going to assume that they won't be able to keep up with a board and that they might struggle there, but also contribute to discussions in the way that you think you can contribute to them, because even like a smaller different perspective is a good one. And it's really important for us to have diversity. So absolutely apply if you think you can contribute at all. It doesn't have to be like experts in finance, because there's going to be those on the board anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of the time there's lots of different skills on the board and we should play to our strengths. And that's not to say that people can't learn as they go on. I'm going to go to Gilah and then to Sim.
Thanks, Ria. Yeah, I really echo everything that Agno and Abigail have already said. And I also just think it's really about thinking what kind of knowledge and skills are valued and or like historically valued and privileged over others, and really thinking about how we can challenge that, which is really what Agno and Abby have said. So they've said it perfectly. I haven't got much more to add.
Perfect. That's all good. Sim?
Yeah, no, I think something that occurs to me looking back about my kind of background of like why I thought I had the audacity to like be able to feed into how an organization runs, a charity runs, is like I come from a background of working with co-ops, like mostly non-hierarchical organizations where all of the members are directors of the organization. Having done this for like quite a few years, it's like kind of second nature to me to thinking about stewarding organizations, and thinking about what's best for the organization, not just what is best for the employees or the members. I think as soon as any person gets involved in working at an organization or volunteering there, you're gonna have opinions about how the organization can be run, what its priorities are, how to use its resources, its money. And I think it's about like fostering and encouraging that like sense of like, yeah, you've got opinions, come and be on the like most senior level of leadership within this charity. That's you've got interesting things to say. Yeah, that's what I think.
Definitely. I think it's also sometimes on the boards, right, to foster that sense of a like sense of agency, I guess, for people to speak up and come to share their opinions. And there's a lot to be said around the board culture as well, in terms of how well you can foster young people and people with diverse perspectives to kind of come in and share and feel confident in sharing. So I guess with that in mind, a lot of boards still operate with traditional structures and language that can often be quite intimidating. Are there any small changes that you think would make a big difference in creating kind of a more welcoming board culture? Um, I'll start this time with Gilah, and then go to Agno.
Sure, thanks, Ria. It's a really interesting question. Um, I say that I was very fortunate to join a board which was already very serious about inclusion and like actively sought out young trustees through applying on Young Trustees Network. Um, and because of that, I really did feel like there was an active effort to kind of seek out my opinions, my thoughts and contributions, and like really value them. And that's obviously that's how everyone should feel when they're on a board, whether you're experienced in years or bringing new experience. And a young trustee, it applies to all trustees. Um, and with that in mind, we're now kind of doing this wholesale governance review. I'm also a trustee and company secretary, but with a view more for diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. So it's really interesting to see how that inclusion aspect overlaps and actually makes for better governance. But I think, so putting that in practice, like chairs actively seeking out young trustees' opinions in board meetings, it can be quite easy sometimes to just sit back and let everyone else do the talking. But I noticed our chair really, in a way that's not kind of like putting you on the spot, but just asking you in a kind of soft encouragement way. Do you have any, what's your thoughts on that kind of thing? With no pressure, of course. I also think a lot of face-to-face time as well, it can be quite helpful just in giving you that extra push. Obviously, it depends where you're based and everything and kind of what time available you have. But I remember PFP kind of making the time for me to meet the founder as well and really kind of taking me through that whole journey of how PFP came to be. And that was something that I really appreciated. Also, in terms of recruitment practices as well, even asking kind of like, what does inclusion mean to you when you're interviewing to be on the board? I think that's something that really shows that inclusion and young trustees being involved is really valued and is kind of top priority, you know. Yeah.
There are so many things I wanted to touch on, but I'm gonna go to Agno and then try to draw things together afterwards. Agno.
100% agree with everything that's been said. I think those are such good and important points to be made. I think I'll add to that, and also I've noticed that Rebecca's made this point in the chat, but acronyms, I found that to be a big hurdle, and um, the WWF UK board was very, very helpful in that. Every time an acronym came up, someone would chime in and be like, "We've forgotten to explain this acronym," not just because I was a young trustee necessarily, but for everyone, because not everyone has a finance background, not everyone has a science background. And so it was just helpful to have that within the culture. And it wasn't something that was forced. It just naturally existed because people wanted to make sure everyone felt included. And I just love the fact that that existed already. I think that's really important to have, sort of everyone looking out for each other within the board. So another thing that sort of WWF had within it was having like a really structured onboarding process. So having like points of contact, sort of a mentor on the board. So after your first meeting, you can go and talk to them, be like, what went well, what didn't go well, how can you sort of improve? And then there was a real opportunity for feedback. I think that's really important, just generally. So like being able to not to be able to really give honest feedback and tell them what's going well and what's not going well. Can we change this thing? And what I found is that most people are very happy to make those changes when you've explained them, but making sure there's a place that you can go to where you're not you don't feel like you're sort of judged or you don't feel like you're putting burden on other people. In that space really helps to be able to sort of talk about the problems that you're facing and really make changes. And then I think the really, really big thing I think is sort of like the rest of the board being really having that space of psychological safety. So like making sure that no one feels sort of scared to contribute. I think that matters so much. I think that the chair has a huge role in that, making sure that people are included. I think that then sort of needs to be reinforced in sort of every meeting where sort of people are not left out and the questions are asked where necessary to sort of try to include people, but also when people are not feeling like they want to contribute to this part, there's a safe space for them to not do that as well.
Yeah, and I think that is so, so important to kind of foster that care within a board and maybe thinking about how when there is a new trustee that joins, whether they're a young trustee or not a young trustee, any trustee in general, to have that kind of solid onboarding process and maybe even thinking about a buddy system so that there is kind of someone there who's a bit more experienced and understands that culture of that board more than you as a new person, and you have someone there to ask questions to, whether that's before or after a meeting. I think that's something really tangible that boards can take away. Abigail, and then to Sim.
Yeah, I mean, something that is important to note is that young trustees, they're still adults as well. So you can still expect them to learn quite as easily as an older trustee too. Like inclusion isn't necessarily about dumbing things down. It's about just explaining things and making sure that everyone is on the same page. So I think that really there should definitely be more movement to be more accessible and more inclusive, but also talk to them like you would be talking to an older board member as well. I do think like just having good board papers in advance of the meeting will really help because like I don't know about you guys, but I really love to just research everything beforehand. Like I've learned so much from these and just write my notes in advance so that at the meeting I feel comfortable contributing.
Yeah, definitely. Super important and for all trustees again as well. Sim?
Oh my God, I so do that thing of like researching everything. Like it's so interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna say that as a young trustee, I I definitely have like a sense of imposter syndrome, right? I'm sat around this table. My FPF where I work is a little bit different in that most trustees are not retired or older. They're all like working age, but they're mostly like 45 to 65. Um, and so like I'm mostly sat around the table with a bunch of like people in senior leadership positions, chief execs, that sort of thing, like big financy investment people. That's not who I am. I make up for this by being incredibly thorough about how I read the papers and researching everything. And Agno, like you said, having a vocab list. Oh my God, my vocab list is so long. And I think you should be encouraging all trustees to be keeping them for like different sectors. Yeah, I I I will ask questions about every single aspect of the organization, not just feeding into conversations about diversity and inclusion. In fact, I probably won't even feel comfortable feeding into the diversity conversations until I feel heard on other matters. Yeah, so basically, it's not just about getting people through the door when it comes to like all kinds of diversity and inclusion. It's about taking them seriously when they are there, not just liking the idea of them, but actually engaging with like the things that they bring to the conversation, their ideas, their questions. Yeah, and like having lots of spaces for feedback. I liked that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've like just stated a really, really important point, which is to value kind of the people's ideas that they bring, not just the the identities that they are, right? And don't treat us like a tick box and actually meaningfully engage with us as young trustees, but also all of your trustees. We've started to talk a little bit about recruitment and kind of some of the problems, I guess, within recruitment for trustees within the charity sector, but also different ways in which you kind of ended up being recruited. We know that like over 80%, maybe 90% of recruitment within the trustee world happens through word of mouth, and that is very, very inaccessible. It often means that you end up with trustees that look like one another and think like one another. You're not getting that diversity of perspectives that nourishes a healthy board. And so what are your thoughts in terms of how charities can rethink their recruitment pathways and how they recruit? I'm going to go to Sim first and then to Agno.
Okay, sure. Sorry, I'm coughing. I'm gonna happy bonfire night, by the way, everyone, and being here with us. So I'm aware that so number one, I work with grant making organizations, and that's gonna make things look a little bit different. And two, my role is paid. I get paid £300 a month, fixed fee remuneration ever since I've been doing this associate trustee role. Now, it's going to look very different from you, whether you're from a charity with an endowment and how much you can pay, and also whether you think that you could like have this separate associate trustee role. In my case, my organization reactively created this bespoke associate / trainee trustee program. You could probably do that proactively, like going out to hire. So for me, that looks like what does a support program look like? It looks like, I think, having meetings with staff. So I have every 6 weeks a one-to-one with our chief exec, and that like gives me a chance to talk about the latest words on my vocab list, or questions that have come up from reading the papers. I like being sent to events and conferences. I think for me, a lot of learning happened outside of the board meetings and actually outside of the organization, thinking about contextualizing my organization within all of the other organizations that we know, the ecosystems. So talking to people outside the organization really helped. And then going to like specific training things. So in my sector, that is Association for Charitable Foundations, ACF is our membership body, and they run lots of trainings like very regularly. Also Charity Finance is an organization that do trainings. There is also like specific asset managers who run like seminars and trainings about investment, which is a big thing that I've had to like skill up, because who knows about asset managers? I like, maybe some people do, but I didn't. And also Modern Grant Making are a great organization who talk about grant makers. So similar to that, there's going to be like sector specific stuff that you can like kind of think about. Okay, what's a bespoke trainee trustee program possibly going to look like? Yeah, that's my input.
Yeah, thank you. And I think there is something to say there about like the amount of support that boards offer, particularly if you're allowed to charity and can afford to spend money on trustee training. It's definitely something to consider. I know that you could probably run something internally, but there are other programs out there. And Agno mentioned Forward Boost earlier, which is Young Trustees Movement's program. They do have kind of match funded places and grant funded places, I believe, grant funded places for people who can't necessarily afford to pay it upfront in terms of the charities. What I also wanted to say was that there's lots of other resources online. There's a recruitment checklist that Young Trustees Movement has, for example, and that really brought together some research about better ways of recruiting that make it more kind of accessible and transparent, and also get you to think through the current recruitment situation you've got going on, and how it can be improved and transformed within the resources that you have. So check that out. I can't remember who I said I was going to. I think I said Abigail. But I might have just made that up. But Abigail.
Yeah, I can't remember who said either now. If anyone else remembers, feel free to jump in. For me personally, it like I said before, it was very straight line. I went to that trustee meeting, then I was committed to doing the role. But I know that if I didn't go to that trustee meeting originally and I didn't get that chance, I probably wouldn't have gone down this path. So I think like it's less of a chance of assuming that young people understand trusteeship, understand what it's about, and instead approaching them instead and giving them the opportunity to find out. Whilst this could be going towards, say, a university and giving a presentation there, it's also important to note that a lot of young people don't go to university now. Like at current, we're facing the highest levels of young people who are not in employment, education, or training, which is very unfortunate. And they would definitely love to do something like this, but they just simply don't know about these opportunities. So, absolutely, if you're recruiting, go through various like career schemes for young people, go through different charities who might want to train young people and let them know that you're interested on taking some of the people in their network on. So instead of just like relying on them coming to you through your job advert, go to them instead. I think that's like especially important as well if you're trying to get a really diverse sort of demographic to apply. Of course, like things are going to be biased depending on what sector you're in, and so it's really important to tackle that bias yourself instead of just expecting the bias to be overcome automatically by, say, putting a message on your recruitment that is like people from such and such background especially welcome, because they're not going to see that if they don't know that the advert exists to begin with.
Absolutely. Like a lot of people generally don't know what a trustee is. How are they gonna know that you're recruiting for a trustee position, right? And you've got to kind of go out and meet people where they're at. And someone's popped it in the chat, and just lost it. But they said, talk to your members, supporters, social media followers about what trusteeship is and encouraging them to apply. You've got to kind of go to where people are, go to where the young people are if you're trying to engage with young people specifically, right? I'm going to go to Gilah and then to Agno.
Thanks so much. Yeah, Abigail, I love those ideas of like, yeah, tackling your own biases and going to people instead of waiting for them to come to you. That like I echo that so much. I think so I came through the Young Trustees movement. So I was actively seeking it out through kind of spaces that were already made available to young trustees. But I think it really helped me in the fact that that language was there, that they were like explicit, that PFP were kind of explicitly looking for young trustees and or people who had no experience before. And that was really comforting to me that I could kind of like come into this without having that history or experience. And I think that, yeah, I think also having young people on interview panels would be something that's really important in the process as well, kind of seeing young people already in that position. And I think it can reduce maybe potential like intimidation, or just seeing yourself reflected there is something that can be really powerful and encouraging. I think also organizations need to understand like what they can also offer young trustees. Like, why should young trustees be interested in them? So that might be leadership training, it might be, you know, understanding more about charity governance or something along those lines. I also think that even something small like offering a chat to existing trustees or founders to kind of like demystify what trusteeship is, and actually, is this the right thing for you? And is this something that you feel that you can thrive in as well? Yeah, hopefully that helps a bit.
Yeah, definitely don't forget when you are going for a trustee position that it is kind of a two-way process, right? Like, sure, they're interviewing you, but you also need to see if you're the right fit for them and they're the right fit for you. And so it works both ways. And again, Young Trustees Movement does have a checklist for aspiring trustees as well, to see if like that place that you're applying for and it being interviewed for is the right one for you. Agno?
Well, that was a really good point there. I'm starting to think of any more, but I think maybe something I found was sort of being really intentional about what happens after recruitment within the recruitment process. So one of the things that I found very helpful within when I got recruited was knowing that I would be onboarded into the Board Boost program and have a mentor before I joined, I already knew that I had an opportunity to learn. I knew that I would have support systems in place. I knew where I would go from as soon as I started, which I think was really incredible, but it's really rare. And it's because they put so much thought into not just the process of opening the door to young people, because it's easy to say we want a young trustee, but it's not easy to keep them and develop them. So I think there's two parts to that, I guess. There's one in the sense of actually getting people to know what trusteeship is and sort of drawing that attention to the young trustees, but then also making sure that there's enough information there so that when they join, they can continue to be a part of the board, not feel like this is not for them and actually make it worse. And I think it's really important that there's real sort of thought behind that process when advertising. So before they've joined, there needs to be sort of an idea of how those support structures will be put in place. And again, I just want to sort of reiterate what everyone else has said, sort of like recognizing that there's no single pathway in, like making sure that there's targeting to like all different sort of backgrounds, all different areas is really important. I mean, I stumbled upon this opportunity on a random social media post, which I clicked and I thought maybe a fake link, and then eventually did more research and then realized was an actual thing that I could join as a 21-year-old. I mean, honestly, it's you stumble upon opportunities like this, and it shouldn't be something you stumble upon necessarily. It needs to be more easy to access, and I think really approaching the different careers, career services, and things like that is really useful because a lot of people currently, as Abigail said, are like struggling to find employment, and it's something it's an opportunity for the young people who are aspiring to be trustees as well, because it's an opportunity for them to show that they can do these sort of like work in a board, work together with sort of different senior people or finance people, or sort of have that experience of working with different types of people and people in different functions and learning all of those skills. And there's not really an opportunity for them to express themselves in that way either. So it's that two-way street that Ria was talking about, in the sense that there is a lot that trusteeship offers to a young person, and there is a lot that the young person offers to trusteeship, and they both need to be encapsulated during recruitment, or else we'll struggle to sort of recruit anybody. And then, as Simin said about the sort of payment, I won't go into that too much because they've done a wonderful job of explaining that, but like wholly agree with that too.
Yeah, definitely. So many important things that you just kind of like wrapped up and summarized that I was going to say, to be honest, which is brilliant. Yeah, I think it really is. It's a two-way kind of journey, but also the journey needs to continue, like start before recruitment, obviously encapsulates the recruitment process, but also must continue and must be iterative kind of after you've recruited the trustees that you were recruiting for. I'm going to move on to audience questions now. And I'm going to take one very quick one from Peter and answer it myself and then move on to some others. But Peter asked, what do you count as a young trustee? And at Young Trustees Movement, we count a young trustee as someone under the age of 30. But depending on the research you see out there, there's different kind of ages. As we know that the most common age of a trustee is 65 years old. So that's the average age. So I'd say there's a broad range of young trustees, but we'd say it's under the age of 30. Another question, which I think would open up an interesting discussion, and we started to touch on it actually already, is do you like being called young trustee, or would you prefer to be called trustee? I don't know if there's anyone that wants to go first on this one.
I'm happy to go first on that. In fact, I have a good anecdote on it actually, because it's something that I think it's a double-edged sword, in the sense that I found it very useful in the recruitment process, because it made sure that I knew that it was an opportunity open to youth and that a young person could be a part of it. But then once I joined, I thought it became a hindrance, because everyone was confused as to sort of is the youth trustee an actual fully fledged trustee? Is the youth impact committee member, do they have the same responsibilities as a normal? Like, is there a difference? And it was a question that everyone had in their head, but no one asked, and different people had different opinions on it. Some people who were involved in the design knew 100% it was the exact same. There was just a word that was used in recruitment. but others thought, oh wait, they're not actually a fully fledged, they're sort of a trainee, but they don't have the same responsibilities necessarily. And what I found during sort of discussions and feedback, that was one question that everyone wanted to know the answer to. And it led to sort of a changing in sort of the legal framework within the organization of how we call what we call and what responsibilities are referred to for each member of the committees and all that. So I found that really useful to have that differentiation between sort of making sure that people know when the role is the exact same as someone who's not a member of the youth necessarily, but also making sure that during the recruitment process, we're making it very clear that it's available to the youth. So I think there needs to be sort of differentiation at the starting point, but also it needs to be made clear that the role and responsibilities are the exact same, because otherwise that imposter syndrome really grows on you, because I didn't know the answer to that either. And I thought I wasn't confident in the answer to that, I should say, because I thought I was a fully fledged, and the sort of recruitment process did tell me I was, but I wasn't 100% sure. And when I was 100% sure and everyone else was 100% sure, I just suddenly felt a lot more confident being there. And it was sort of, I don't know, it just lifted a sort of stress or thing in my mind that I had. And it was sort of a blocker that I didn't talk about, but when I did talk about, made such a huge difference.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a really like concrete example of why when you're recruiting, charities must be on the same page about these types of things, right? And so that it doesn't create that kind of confusion or maybe even like a hindrance of any kind of confidence within whoever is stepping up into that role. I know that actually before I give Young Trustees Movement's opinion, let me go to some of the other panelists. I'll go to Abigail, then to Sim, and then to Gilah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that having a label specifically for young trustees is helpful in a lot of ways. For instance, like we all wouldn't be here at this panel unless it was specifically searchable and easy to access for young trustees specifically, because you need that label to sort of campaign and advocate on behalf of having more of them. That said, there's definitely like the case of that shouldn't be the identity that they carry in the boardroom. It should just be a label that they can use to say that this is a potential barrier that they could face. Like they should just be treated like a normal trustee. And I do think it's really important to have that label existing, but it's also important to not make it the person's identity. I think we touched a bit on this earlier, and I think that's like a really important point because of course like young trustees, they're going to start off with a certain level of experience, but if they're early on in their career like me, they're going to grow throughout that experience as well. So it's sort of like, you're committing to them, you are investing in them, I suppose. So like if they start off as a young trustee, they're not necessarily going to be lesser to the board, but they may face different disadvantages. So it is important to recognize a difference, but not exclude them because of that difference.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold off still on my views before get around the rest of the panel. Sim.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. Like, I prefer the term associate trustee because it's like it says that like I didn't have the experience of being a trustee and like thinking about the strategic direction of a like tens of millions of pounds endowment like organization to start with. And that's what's important, not the young part. Yeah.
Thank you. Gilah?
Yeah, I really agree with everything that's been said. I think that, it being a young trustee and being labeled that way it speaks to your different experiences, but it also kind of, speaks to your added value as well. But then again, obviously it can become that double-edged sword. And I think if it does become that double-edged sword, it can speak to, wider what the environment of in terms of diversity and inclusion is on the board already. So if people do see it as that added value, that's obviously a really good thing. But then if it is causing like second guessing and things like that, what does that say about what other changes that then need to happen as a result of that? Yeah.
Yeah, Really important and really interesting reflections. So I guess young trustees movement would say that we use the word young to specifically identify the issue within kind of the underrepresentation of young people within charity boards, right? We use that very intentionally with that use in mind, but it shouldn't be a hindrance to people becoming trustees, and the roles and the responsibilities that they have should be the same as other trustees, and ideally everyone would be able to be a trustee over the age of 18, regardless of kind of how much lived experience they have or professional experience they have, that there's always something that people can bring to the table. I think that we really recognize that people aren't one-dimensional. We have lots of different facets to our identities, and we speak about young people because we are focused on young people, but we recognize that there's a real problem with underrepresentation across many different protected characteristics and broader within the charity sector. And so people kind of should be accepted for who they are, and we need diverse perspectives, and we can only have healthy boards with diverse perspectives. I'm going to take one more question from the audience, and then move on to one final question as a wrap up. So I've got kind of two that I'm gonna wrap into one. So from Pat, any ideas for recruiting young trustees? And then from Rachel, where can roles be advertised, particularly kind of to find peers who might not know about trusteeship? Yeah, if you can do that in maybe 1 minute each. Abigail and then Agno.
Yeah, there are a few different charities and schemes that are trying to get young people into employment, and I think it's helpful to reach out to them. Unfortunately, I do not have a specific name in mind. I did, but definitely look into that. Also reach out to different universities and different university societies, especially because that's where all the students go, to see if you can maybe give a presentation or run an event with them. And definitely look into different spaces as well. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. There's like so many opportunities that you can do. Young people, they want these roles. You just have to find where they are.
Absolutely. We know that there is a recruitment crisis within the trustee sector. So there's so many different vacancies and young people are so up for filling them. We just need to find them. Agno?
It's quite a hard question, to be honest. I think we need to go everywhere in the sense that it could be social media, it could be sort of wherever the normal graduate schemes or apprenticeships or sort of school leaver roles are. It could be alongside those roles, sort of making connections to where young people would be going next. I think that's what's most important. So making sure that we're asking the question of where would young people be looking for their next role, for their next opportunity, and then trying to target those. But I think it's really hard to come up with a sort of one size fits all answer to this. It really depends on what the size of your charity is, what you're looking to get out of it, and how much time and effort you have to actually put into the process of looking. Because there's a balance of time you spend looking and advertising versus the time you have to actually give to the person you've recruited. I think that's a fine balance, and it should change depending on the size and the size of the charity, the time that you have as a group, as the members and the staff of the charity. And that's a sort of reflection that you need to do before you sort of try to recruit. So I don't know if that was an unhelpful answer, but
No,
yeah.
I think that was a great answer because you're right. I think we do need to be everywhere and tapping into spaces that we haven't even thought about, but also the traditional kind of spaces for recruitment as well. Gilah and then Sim.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. It's a mixture, exactly has already been said, being everywhere, thinking about where young people are looking for next. I suggest maybe looking at mentorship schemes as well. Like I think that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of a lot of mentorship schemes. And there are clearly those intergenerational links being made there and young people participating in them. So I think that's a really good place to start. Youth networks, also within organizations already, and kind of who is in their network and approaching them actively. I think that can kind of pave the way slightly.
Great. Thank you. Sim?
The questions around like how to recruit for young trustees.
If it's all been covered, it's been covered, and that's fine. I guess one other thing to add actually, so we've mentioned things like going to your members, things like trying unis and careers places, social media, things like community centres and spaces. And like if you've got like a voluntary community sector overarching body in your local area that would be able to advertise recruitment, that might be somewhere to go. And also Young Trustees Movement does have an opportunity posting site for charities to post opportunities, but also for aspiring trustees to look at places that are really willing to take young people as trustees. I'm going to come to my...
Actually,
Oh yeah, go on.
I thought of something, which is just about like an example of how the organization I work with is doing it. So Friends Provident Foundation are like part of this group of organizations that are gonna like run this competition about better investment, and like inviting asset managers to like think about the best way of putting investment out there, which is kind of along the sort of stuff that they do anyway. As part of that, they've like created this panel of young people who will think about what do these young people think the best thing to do is. And for me, I see that as like a really good route into the organization. I think the point I'm trying to make is see the other ways your organization interacts with young people, engage with them, and see how might they like kind of join in that pipeline of coming into being a trustee.
Yeah, definitely. I think you need to assess, right, where young people are at and the people you've already engaged with, and think about meeting people where they are at. I fear I might have run out of time for my last question that I wanted to ask, and I'll tease you with it. It was kind of, what is the vision you have for the next generation of boards, say in like 10 years' time? But that's something I guess we can all keep thinking about. I'm going to hand back to Penny now to wrap up.
Wow. Thank you, Ria, Sim, Gilah, Abigail, and Agno. That was absolutely incredible. I feel like the future of trusteeship is utterly safe in your hands. And if we can just clone this group into a kind of, I don't know, nearly 1 million more, then we're sorted. We're fine. We can stop worrying. That was really brilliant. Thank you. It was so thoughtful. And what struck me is that everything you suggested is completely obtainable. It's attainable. You know, nothing was wild or massively resource intensive. It just sounded like sensible stuff we should all be doing. So that was brilliant. Thank you. When you log off, attendees, you'll get the normal question if your Zoom's up to date, which just asks you how you found this session. Please do tell us. We pore over them. They're really important to us to know how the festival is going. And to highlight a couple more sessions that are probably relevant to what we've been talking about today. Tomorrow at 12:30, we've got Who's Missing from Your Board? Inclusive Approaches to Finding New Trustees. Bernice from Eastside People is chairing that with a panel. That'll be the nuts and bolts of inclusive recruitment. And then tomorrow night, we've got another one of these free sessions as part of the Aspiring Trustee strand, which is how to build your confidence as a trustee. So we hope that people can join us for that. Big thank you to our partners, particularly the Institute of Leadership, Stone King and Fair Collective. And please do check out Eastside People. For aspiring trustees, we recruit trustees, so do have a look at our ad page. And for people who are already in organisations, we do lots around good governance and trustee recruitment. So thank you all so much for coming, and I'm sure we can go off now and have a good think about everything we've heard. Thank you. I hope you all have a lovely evening.